I'm Josh Schlossberg. I'm an award-winning science writer. I'm a journalist on sabbatical, and I'm currently the Colorado organizer for Eco Integrity Alliance. My father is a volunteer firefighter, and my cousin worked for years as a wildland firefighter. Okay, so since 2005, I've been tracking the issue of what is often called wildfire fuel reduction, what I call wildfire pretense logging, across our western public forests. So we're talking county land, state land, a lot of national forests is where I focus on. I have to say that Jefferson County is doing the most aggressive, counterproductive, dangerous, and I have to say also least democratic version I've seen outside of commercial logging sales in the Pacific Northwest. Just a personal opinion. So I've walked almost every mile of trail in every JeffCo Open Space park. So around 2019, I think it was, maybe someone could correct me, I started seeing a little bit of tree cutting in Alderford Three Sisters on the other side. And then a lot more aggressive stuff in Myers Ranch. And that got me worried, but I was like, okay, maybe this is just a couple things. Then I saw Flying J, which a lot of you possibly have been to. So that's managed by both Jefferson County and Denver Mountain Parks. That made me realize that we have a problem. Who here has been to Flying J since the, okay, yeah. Do you recognize those photos? Okay. So in 2022 in Elk Meadow, JeffCo did cut some of the larger trees in the park. So these are scores of mature and old growth trees up to 129 years old. The county's forest plan does say to leave the older trees. So they're doing the second phase now in Elk Meadow. They're shutting down the park for several months, and this is also in areas that we weren't allowed to hike before because they were too ecologically sensitive. So I find that a little ironic. More recently, JeffCo did log a huge portion of the extremely popular and once gorgeous Alderford Three Sisters Park right on the trails. So these are old growth trees up to 211 years old. Who's been to the park since the cutting? Yeah. People. Those are some of my beautiful photos. Sorry, this takes a little while to click this online. So here's part of the problem as I see it. Myself and other locals, we've been trying to engage with Jefferson County on this issue since about 2020. In 2022, we got several hundred signatures from Jefferson County residents on an online petition. We've had 8 media articles come out about this. It's been a little tricky to get media to cover this, but there has been some media. And county commissioners would just ignore our communications and offer no responses. I've never experienced that. I've been doing this for a long time in a lot of different places. I was really shocked by that. And so this is going to be a little controversial here, but I just want to explain to you what the process has been thus far for those of us who have been trying to engage, so we can hopefully change this. So February 2022 town hall meeting, there were only 4 people other than staffers in the audience. I attended this because commissioners were not responding to my emails. I had sent them photos of what was going on in Elk Meadow, the large trees being cut. So they talked for an hour. There was a Q&A comment period. I wanted to say 3 minutes worth of reporting what was going on in the parks. Commissioner Andy Kerr, he shut me down after about 2 minutes. He just wouldn't let me speak, and I was really surprised by that, which is why, you'll see why I sort of did interrupt the session afterwards. I don't condone that necessarily, but here's what happened. So Commissioner Leslie Dahlkemper was part of this, and I had provided photographs, laminated photographs, which I have over there, of the trees and the age. You can see all the rings counted out. And I said, what do you think about this? And here's what she said.
Let me be very clear. We've talked with JeffCo Open Space. There are no old growth, 125-year plus trees that have been cut down.
False. So to me, that was really just upsetting when I'm providing photographs and they're saying it's not happening. There's been other explanations for what she said. She's never corrected the record. I think she was not aware of these trees that were being cut, and instead of saying, we don't know, we'll look into it, she said, it's not happening with photographs. So that's the point where I realized we had a real problem. So what if we just missed our chance to engage, right? They were telling us and we just didn't show up. Well, let's look at this article from Colorado Sun in 2022. JeffCo Open Space did not set a round of public hearings or exchanges over the comprehensive new forest plan, relying instead on the upcoming commissioner's consideration to air out major issues. And the other quote was, this is from the county, we used to host public meetings to advertise forestry projects, but they weren't well enough attended for us to feel like we were reaching a critical mass of residents. So, think what you want about that. That's why we're doing this public forum, because there wasn't really an opportunity for this before. So this is looking into the so-called Forest Health Plan of Jefferson County Open Space from 2022. So one of the quotes is, large mature trees are often underrepresented and in most cases should be favored for retention. I guess you can parse them in most cases how you like, but they are cutting down scores of up to 200-year-old trees, and the reasoning I was told is that that's to protect the other 300-year-old trees. I've not heard that before.
Which don't exist.
So, in my opinion, based on the ecological science and stuff that I've been looking at for years, removing those large trees is the worst thing you can do ecologically in a forest, but also for wildfire. And in the open space plan, it does say, this is a quote from them, which you can see, the intensity and spread of fire are influenced more by small woody debris, less than 3 inches in diameter. So, there you have it. I use for this, whether they're mature, old growth trees or 100-year-old plus trees. JeffCo is logging some of the oldest, largest, most ecologically important, and yes, fire-resistant trees in our forest under the guise, is what I say, of wildfire mitigation. Now, I don't believe that what's being done does protect the community, but even those who do support selective small tree cutting can see for themselves that's not just what's happening in our parks. So the logging also opens once protected forest stands, and hundreds of trees have blown down around these clear cuts. In the unlogged adjacent forest, hardly any trees have fallen. And this was all predicted by studies, this is not a surprise. So while the JeffCo Forest Plan acknowledges it's the small diameter woody branches that are the main fire concern, they're cutting the larger trees behind and they're leaving flammable tinder behind for months.
Yes.
Well, up to years, and I've seen in other places, literally up to decades. Now let's get into a little bit of numbers here. The county plans to log up to 1,000 acres by 2025. Its forest plan warns it may be feasible to log up to 40,000 acres of JeffCo forest. Feasible, doesn't mean they're going to do it, but that's 62.5 square miles across 32 public parks and hiking trails at your expense. You're going to pay for it too. So I hope that doesn't happen, but it's important to know that our tax dollars are financing this. That's why you have a say. So food prices, rent, basic costs of living are up for all of us. Jefferson County commissioners are making the decision to waste millions of tax dollars on this unscientific, controversial at best logging. Most of this money comes from federal, some from state, some from county sales tax. Now, to get nerdy with the numbers here, this is $1,800 an acre under ideal conditions, up to $10,000 an acre further from roads and on steep slopes. So, math whizzes here, correct my math if I did this wrong, but for 1,000 acres by 2025 with an average of 5,900, splitting the difference between 18 and 10, that's $5.9 million that could be spent on protecting homes through home hardening or preventing human-caused ignitions through patrolling and enforcement. Even lowball ideal conditions across 40,000 acres would be $72 million. If you average that 5,900 an acre over the 40,000, that would be $250 million. So they're obviously not going to do all that. But then the question is, what happens when the invasive weeds, the grass, and then some of the smaller trees grow back years later? They're going to come in every 10 years and do this? So here's one of the other pieces completely left out of the public discussion, at least by Jefferson County. So it's how a large and growing by the month body of peer-reviewed scientific studies, so these are studies not funded by agencies or industries that profit from or engage in the logging, they show that not only won't the logging protect communities from wildfire, as ineffective, tree cutting can make flames burn hotter and spread faster by opening forests to sunlight and wind. If you've been out in these cuts, you can tell it's hot, it's dry, and it's windy. So the industry agency narrative of overgrown forests coupled with unusual high severity wildfire has been refuted, contested by studies finding that western dry forests, even prior to fire suppression, including across the Front Range in ponderosa pine, did grow densely, did routinely experience high severity wildfire. So the most credible science, much of which is corroborated by the U.S. Forest Service, concludes that this logging isn't just unnecessary and ineffective at protecting communities from wildfire. It can increase the risk to our properties and lives. So I'm going to bore through a few of these just so it's said on the record here. 2021 study, mechanical treatments may increase the risk of fire by increasing sunlight exposure to the forest floor, drying surface fuels, promoting understory growth, increasing wind speeds that leave residual trees vulnerable to wind throw. 2019 study, denser, older forests with high canopy cover had lower fire severity. 2018 study, despite holding surface fuel constant, flame length increased following thinning, likely from decreases in stand level canopy cover and corresponding increases in effective wind speed and fire line intensity. 2011 study, in the case of a clean fuel break with surface fuel cleared, this increase of wind speed and channels is likely to increase the fire spread. Okay, what if you don't trust independent peer-reviewed science, right? So let's take a look at a study that talks about their study. So this is a quick one from 2023. Our rebuttal shows that evidence omitted in the U.S. Forest Service review left a falsification of the scientific record with significant land management implications. So a lot of the parameters for the studies are contested. So let's just put it that way. So, but a lot of the Forest Service studies, even the ones that conclude that we should log, if you look closer, they have pieces of evidence that pokes holes in their own narrative. This is a 2019 study co-authored by the U.S. Forest Service that is pushing this stuff across up to 45 million acres in the West right now. Forest Service says, thin forests have more open conditions which are associated with higher temperatures, lower relative humidity, higher wind speeds, and increasing fire intensity. The tree huggers of the Forest Service said this, right? So 2012 study from the Forest Service for the 4 Mile Canyon fire in Boulder, thin forests, quote, burned more severely than neighboring areas where the fuels were not treated. The Hayman Fire in 2008, a study co-authored by Forest Service. Extreme conditions and fire behavior permitted intense surface fire through treated areas. Fuel breaks and treatments were breached by massive spotting and intense surface fire. This included almost all treatment methods, including prescribed burning and thinning. Suppression efforts had little benefit from fuel modifications. So the fact that these studies have really not been rebutted and mostly totally ignored by our county, it's not just anti-science, I believe it's life-threatening. So more and more people are moving, they're packing into the fire plane, and time will tell. So you can check out all these studies at ecointegrityalliance.org, eco-integrityalliance.org. Okay, this is a video I'm going to show you real quick while I talk over this. I took this 3 days ago. So this was a Roosevelt National Forest near Nederland. So behind that sign is an area that they thinned fire mitigation to protect communities. Communities are behind it. They did that in, maybe, I don't know what year, but the fire was in 2016. So they thinned this area out. You can see all the burned stumps, and it's still burned very hot. Well, let's see what happens on the other side of this. This was a mining claim that was protected from logging. No logging happened. I walked through this whole section here. No tree cutting. Magically, this area didn't burn at all. So I will take anyone who wants to see this area. There's countless pieces of evidence for this. And let's just say that you can find other evidence. Sure. But why is this not incorporated into the record? Why is this not part of the discussion? Why have you not heard of this before? Or maybe you have, I don't know. So that's a fun one. I need to edit that video. It's a little boring. All right, I'm going to speed through this. I know I'm talking too much. I apologize. The most important part is you here. I'm just trying to frame this. What should we do then? Scientific consensus is that hardening homes, fire-wise measures like non-flammable roofs, maintaining defensible space 15 to 60 feet around structures. The home ignition zone can save the vast majority of structures from up to the most intense fires. You don't have to clear cut, pruning and limbing up trees. You don't have vegetation touching the house, moving wood piles, getting rid of wood fences, screening vents because of embers. Jefferson County knows this, and they do promote this, so good on them for that. This is where we agree. Unfortunately, this is pricey, and the vast majority of wildfire-related taxpayer funding is going towards this wildfire logging instead of things that we know are effective, which is home hardening grants and loans. We could be spending this money on patrolling and enforcement as well. Remember the 4 fires in July over the Front Range that were within 50-mile radius of each other? Those were all human caused. So can we do more about enforcing the existing regulations, patrolling more? Who knows? County commissioners approve these logging plans, only they really have the power to put the logging on hold. We'll have to put our voices together to make it, frankly, more uncomfortable for them to keep pushing for this controversial and dangerous logging than it is to engage with peer-reviewed science and participatory democracy. With at best all this conflicting information out there, I don't believe it's that conflicting, but let's just say it's conflicting. I think it's wrong for JeffCo to be moving full speed ahead to spend millions on an extremely aggressive version of the most contested aspects of supposedly addressing wildfire, while barely putting any funding at all into the things we know that work, which is home hardening and prevention of human ignitions. They put some funding into it, but the lion's share is going out to cutting your parks to pieces. And last thing I'll say on my soapbox here is, those of us who want change, we don't have to agree on every point. You don't have to agree with me on what I think. But we do need to agree that what JeffCo is doing to our parks isn't quite right. My personal suggestion is there should be a temporary moratorium on any new tree cutting until the county commissioners integrate the whole body of peer-reviewed science and meaningful public involvement. And I believe what happens at JeffCo can ripple across the Front Range, all of Colorado, maybe even the West. That's how important this county is. My take is this isn't just about protecting our local parks and forests or saving communities from wildfire. It is, but it's also bringing participatory democracy back to life in a county, state, and say country that seems hell-bent on letting it die.
Yeah, I've been concerned about this for a long time, especially as a really active birder. And because I'm, out there all the time, trying to find, what's going on, what's going through. It's been a really strange fall, by the way. I don't know if other people have experienced that, but I've not seen the migrants that I usually see going through our area. And I'm out every day, and I'm even in my front yard, with a field, camera and trying to figure out what's there. And it's been really odd. So, what are we seeing? There we go. I think, Evergreen Audubon members have multiple viewpoints. We have people who think the things that are going on are really important and helpful, and others who are concerned. So, we're not a monolith at all. And, I really do want to speak to make sure that people know that Evergreen Audubon is a very wide-ranging organization. But what we do really care about is preservation and sustainability of our natural environment, which is terribly threatened in North America and worldwide. And we're concerned that our native wildlife can survive. I'm sure you all know about the 3 billion birds study that came out in Science a few years ago, telling that, we're losing, and the birds we're losing are the ones here, the grassland birds, that are mostly affected. We believe, I think, that the current clear cut and the mastication activities in the parks will have a negative impact on our wildlife and the natural environment that is part of our home community. And the reason we're here, I've lived here for 32 years in Evergreen, and in Colorado, almost 50 now. We really urge, as Josh has said, the county commissioners to take a good look, and listen and hear what people are feeling about it. And, let us know about the decisions and, why certain things are going on. Tell us what's going on and why. This is a picture I took when my husband was still living with our son and our grandsons at Alderfer Three Sisters. That was one of our favorite parks. They were there all the time. And we've been, members of we started Evergreen Audubon in 1968. It's been around for a long time, and we've been watching these parks. We've had the nest boxes. I'm sure you know about the nest boxes in the parks. That program has expanded. Luckily, we're finding that bluebirds actually survive pretty well when things get cut down, as long as there's plenty of insects around, but a lot of other birds don't. What we're concerned about are all of these birds that are in our environment. The hawks, the eagles that we have bald eagles and we have golden eagles in the county. Really important are woodpeckers, all of the two kinds of chickadees that we have, the crossbills that require pine trees and pine nuts in order to survive, the pine siskins, the various kinds of sparrows, all of our warblers, the goldfinches, the flycatchers. These are things that we value, and the hummingbirds that need trees in which to make their nests, right, to survive. Many of our members, of course, have many, many longer lists than that. And we've been conducting studies for years about what is in the environment and what's important to us. So this is not, try to keep this pretty short. We know that the birds in our environment need old trees and young trees. They need shrubs. They need underbrush. They need ground cover, because that's where the food is. The insects, the seeds, all the things that they eat and that they feed to their young. You see hummingbirds going to the flowers to get nectar. They come to your hummingbird feeders for sugar water. But when they're feeding baby hummingbirds, which are the size of a bumblebee, they're getting insects because the baby hummingbirds need protein. So they're looking for places where there's plenty of insects and plenty of ground cover and a lot of stuff around to help them find the things they need. We want our birds alive. We don't want more extinctions. It's a pretty sad, I work for Cornell Lab for ornithology, and I read the accounts of birds that there's 10 left in the world. There's 100 left in the world. There's one that they found that no one has seen in 100 years. That's what we're dealing with in our environment as well as around the world. We need help, and we need funds, as Josh was remarking, to help protect our homes. If you read a book like Smokescreen, you find out that one of the most successful programs in California, in Southern California, to protect homes was the home. They were working around the homes. They had strict rules telling people the things that they had to get out of the way of fire. We could use some help with that. My husband and I were, mitigating parts of our 5 acres every year. It's a lot of money. I'm sure all of you know that. What trees we're gonna cut down this year? What ground cover are we gonna take out? The latest estimate I have is my forester wants to work on egress. He wants to make sure I can get out of my house if there's a fire, and I need to take trees down that are along my driveway. I have a hellish driveway with like a 60% slope. And I need to have ways I can get out of there if I need to. So those are the things that I'd love to have help with. My homeowners association does a little bit, and the Colorado state tax system does a little bit. You can do some deductions for fire mitigation, but we need more help. So let's talk about homes, not the parks.
As Josh mentioned, my wife and I live almost exactly midway between Evergreen and Conifer. And we didn't know when we bought the place that it was going to be a hiker's paradise. If you draw a 15-mile circle around our house, we have within that 15 miles about a half dozen of the JeffCo Open Space parks, at least that many mountain area parks, Denver mountain parks they call them. National forest parks, who knows how many. We also have Staunton and Bear Creek Lake Park, which is the main reason we go east of 347. We go down there in the winter because you can hike down there without a lot of snow. Anyway, we are avid hikers, to say the least. Ruthie and I go out and we walk or hike every day. And the difference between the two is the distance and how much elevation between a walk and a hike. But we get out every day without fail. And to say literally that we've hiked thousands of miles in JeffCo Open Space would be an understatement, because we certainly have. And one of actually the closest to us is the Flying J Ranch. And the Shadow Mountain Park was just always one of our favorite hikes. I got to the point where I could identify every rock and tree root that you could trip over on the trail. When they started the mitigation up there, we pretty much stayed away from it. We wanted to stay out of the way. We figured they were working, it would be noisy and all that jazz, so we didn't go. When they got finished, I went up and I hiked the Shadow Pine Loop. And honestly, folks, I had tears in my eyes. I was so disappointed in what I saw. And I promised myself I wouldn't walk it again. Simple as that. Well, this spring, I went back. I thought, well, give it a chance, let's take a look. But this time I wasn't sad so much, I was pissed. Because it was worse than what I had seen the previous year, or 2 years ago, whatever it was. Because now, not only was there all that loss of beauty to up there, and acres of just clear cut, but there were more trees were down because of the wind that had come through and blown the darn things down. So it got worse. And my fear, of course, is what's next? Obviously, they're working on Elk Meadow now, but what are they going to do to Mount Falcon? What are they going to do to Reynolds Park? Love Reynolds Park. So the bottom line with me is, yes, we've got to have fire mitigation. I understand and I agree, but clear cutting, that's beyond it. And we don't just go out hiking because we enjoy being out in nature. For us, it's as much for our physical and our mental health, because it's so good for us. In 2022, on April 3rd, I had a heart attack. It's the one that they call the Widowmaker. Fortunately, it didn't work. But 2 days later, Ruthie had me on the trails. And it was the best thing for me. I needed that desperately. And we need it every day. So I can't tell you how thrilling it is to see so many people here, and you as interested in maintaining the beauty of our park system around here as Ruthie and I feel about it. So we need to all get together and try to let the Jefferson County Commissioners know that indeed we need these parks. We don't need the devastation that we've seen. So thank you for being here, and hit the trails.